Hi, Karen. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Amazing. Thank you for having me on.
Beautiful. And like I said earlier, thank you for coming. It means a whole lot. Thank you. Okay, Karen. Mm, mm. I am quite excited to have you on the show for some reasons. All right. Firstly, I believe in order to transition from a chaotic situation to that of a beautiful one, it takes the application of knowledge, quality information. Okay, the second reason why I'm excited to have Karen on the show is for the sake of my audience, the ones who are going to be listening to our conversation. I believe there are some things that Karen knows that some of those folks needs to hear you say this stuff directly from your mouth in order for them to experience transformation. And lastly, that is me. I am so convinced that I am definitely going to learn one or two things from your story, experiences, and insight. So now, Karen, I want you to view me and the audience by the time they will listen to our conversation like your student. And you are our teacher now. Okay, and you're trying to teach your student. That's how I want you to view us. Okay, so for that reason, Karen, let us get started with your introduction. How the journey has been so far, how you got here. Talk to us about how you got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Karen, over to you.
Well, so I've had quite a mixed journey as it was. I've had some big wins, I've had some big losses, and what I do is podcasting and teaching people how to show up on podcasts and how to start them and grow them. But it wasn't always like that, right? I spent a quarter of a century in the fitness industry. So I've always wanted to motivate and inspire people, but obviously before it was in a completely different way. And it was always important for me to have fun and love I think you really should love what you do because you're in work for a very long time. And I had a fantastic 25-year career in the fitness industry. I owned my own fitness studio in the Algarve, Portugal for 8 years. So I achieved my goals there. However, we all get older. So I got to, I think it was 2016, and I was just thinking, I'm exhausted. How much longer can I do such a physically demanding job? I used to teach about 20 very high energy classes a week. I was a sports massage therapist as well for 27 years. And it was like, what do I do next? And I was used to being the teacher. I'm instructing people, I'm helping correct them, I'm trying to encourage them. So the next logical step for me was to become a speaker. But I didn't have anything to sell. What did I know about anything online? I'd spent my life in fitness studios and gyms. So I then joined a coaching team for a high ticket affiliate program, and I had no experience in sales. But just like anything in life, it doesn't matter. You learn as you go, and you've just got to take action. I did very well, but I wanted to, because I was selling other people's programs, I thought, I should sell my own. But that takes time. And I was just about to launch and doing live events. I went back into the health and wellness industry, and I retrained I was teaching about the ketogenic diet for health benefits, for, Alzheimer's, type 2 diabetes. That's always been my passion, health and wellness. And of course, lockdown came, so no more live events. So like many, I had to pivot. And I wanted, because I'm a continuous learner, continuously learning, I put an online summit on, had 20 coaches, giving their perspective from a physical, a mental, or a spiritual perspective. And I thoroughly enjoyed the process. I loved interviewing people because I was genuinely curious as to what they were doing, why they were doing it, how they were doing it, how they were helping people. And I was fortunate enough to be offered a radio show, a weekly radio show. And I jumped at the chance. I just said, yeah. Didn't know why. Again, I didn't have anything to sell on the back of it. I just thought, I enjoy doing this thing. I'll figure it out as I go. And I just found that through interviewing, and now, I don't know, I've interviewed over 200 coaches, consultants. There was a few things that I realized the power of sharing your story, and not necessarily the big achievements. You know, people need to know that you started maybe where they are now. And I realized the power of sharing your story, because I'm sure, like you could receive somebody's bio or look at their website and you might have created a story around what you think they do. And then when they come on the show and share, you go away with a completely different idea. And I think it's such a powerful platform. I think more and more people, they don't want to hear about the celebs, and they want to hear the real people making it work. They're a little bit more in alignment with them to give them inspiration. So that's what I did. And that's really all I do now, is because I know the power of it. I have a podcast network and I help them create not a podcast for vanity. It's not about getting the metrics. Oh, I want to be the top XYZ, but actually for coaches, people who are helping their communities, how do then they use this very powerful tool to build relationships, to build authority, and to attract their ideal client. So that's what I do. That's why I do it. But it was never the plan. And it's funny how things go. Out of something that was horrendous globally, in a weird kind of a way, I can't honestly say that, you know, I regret me going through that process and thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? Like, I've lost everything again. And it just goes to show that as long as you stay open-minded enough to look for the opportunities that are out there, they will come. And then you're doing what you truly love, what's in alignment with you, and the opportunities that can come from it are just amazing.
That's right. I got that. You know, your story is a complete opposite of what happened to one man like that when he shared ease with me. He said, now I've got no strength, and there's nothing I can do. So I just have to stay and be idle. And you see, I'm going to do him a favor. And the favor is I would share this link to him. Our conversation,
Aww.
I'm going to share with him so that he can see that here is someone who also felt like, okay, she doesn't have strength for this anymore. And she didn't stop there. She went forward. What next? That's an amazing story. The fact that you didn't just stay idle and, just staying there, but you went forward. There are more to these things, and I can't just stand still. That's a brilliant one. And the part where you mentioned that you are a continuous learner, that's a great one too. Because in order to provide solutions, in order to help other people now, one needs to be a continuous learner, knowledge seeker all the time, daily, 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 daily. So that's amazing. I love that. I love that. So we have just few questions left because you've answered some of my questions. Okay. Okay, let us begin with what inspired you to start the Raising Vibrations podcast network. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, it again, isn't it funny how things happen? It wasn't, in a way, it wasn't really my idea. because I was interviewing all these amazing people, they were coaches, consultants, therapists, healers, from the conventional to the more woo-woo. So my show originally was called A Coffee with Karen, a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. Because I'm open to lots of things, and I'm interested in learning more. And I realized that, you know what, you might, just because you've got this title coach, none of you are in competition with each other. Why don't we collaborate? Because just because you're a business coach, you might focus on 50-year-old men who've gone through a divorce, and this business coach is dealing with, they're all different target audiences, different niches, and they've all got different tools in their toolbox, and they're all great. You've got to find the right fit for you. And I had an idea about creating like a directory for the public to come and find the right fit for them, because you know what? They might think they need a business coach, but actually they might need to heal some childhood trauma first. So I wanted to create this thing, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. I'd started looking at, how I could add this to my website. And then the owner of the radio station, because as I said, I started in radio, and about 6 months in, I realized, you know what? There's limitations with radio. So I may as well have a podcast as well, same content. And then the owner of the radio station came to me in, I think, September, and said, look, when your contract runs out in December, I'm giving it up. Do you want it? And of course I said yes. I went, there you go. Answer is there. Now I have a platform to help all the other coaches and therapists to have their own show. But I realized I had it for about a year, and I realized I was being spread too thin and trying to do too much, because I tend to do it. I'm an ADHD. I'm a hyper-focused ADHD person. So I think, oh my goodness, I could do this. And sometimes you have to bring it back. And then now I just focus on the actual podcast network. But even that, I felt like I'd failed, because a year in, I had 14 podcasters stop. In fact, some of those didn't even start because they felt overwhelmed, because I was only providing a platform. I wasn't providing coaching. I wasn't providing a strategy. I wasn't providing a process. So again, I had to just sort of reverse engineer, like, why are they not having the success that I was? Right. They need more help, because as you know, there's a little bit more to it than just speaking into a mic. So now that's why I call myself more of a podcast launch strategist, because we're like, right, there's got to be what's the intention behind, what do you want it to actually do? And then structure it in such a way that you get a result from it. So yeah, that's why, raising vibrations, we just call it, we're changing the world one vibration at a time. So yes, it's an awesome place to be. And it's great that I get to not just help myself with my podcast, but I get to help others too.
It's a beautiful one you're doing, I tell you. What you're doing with your podcast is great. Actually, you're right, because I also know someone who started his podcast with so much zeal now. When he started it, he was so excited about it. Then after some months now, I checked up on it, and I realized that, I think the word for it is a pod faded, and it just stopped. Yeah, it just stopped all of a sudden. So, and not only him now, but several others now. So I realized that there must have been a problem somewhere. So that's going to lead to the last question now. Do you have any tips or insight that you can share for aspiring podcasters?
Lots. How long have we got? Number one, it needs to be crystal clear to the listener what it is you do. See, mine wasn't, right? I admit, there was my whole business was all over the place. So Coffee with Karen, what does that even, people just saw me as a host. So my podcast now is called the Podcast Profits Unleashed podcast. Guess what my website's called? podcastprofitsunleashed.com. My programs, my workshops are podcastprofitsunleashed.com/workshop. Everything is an alignment. So it's crystal clear what it is I do, because you don't use your podcast to sell anything, but it does. You get to sell without selling, but it needs to be clear, what it is you do, what is the transformation that you offer people, so that when the listeners, they're listening to your amazing episodes, they're more likely to come into your world. Another tip is, I think so many people just think, build it and they will come. I'll just upload it to Apple, upload it to Spotify, and I'm going to have listeners. Oh, if it were that easy. You need to have a strategy, and your podcast is part of your whole ecosystem. And I think so many people are afraid to put themselves out there. They think uploading their podcast is enough. No. On social media, people are scrolling. They've forgotten the one post that you did about your podcast. Every single day, I post something, whether it's a video, whether it's a snippet of a podcast episode. Because obviously podcast is, for me, the podcast is audio, the video goes on YouTube, but I even stream the video on different platforms. I do the snippets. I do the written format. I turn it into a blog. There's so many things that you can repurpose from one episode. So it doesn't have to take you too much time. There's AI, ChatGPT, get the transcription and ask ChatGPT to create a social media post or a blog post for you and your guest. You could ask it to say, can you write it from the perspective of the guest so that they're more likely to use it? But you've got to get it out there. I post 4, sometimes 5 times a day. One story, one testimonial or a screenshot of a review, a video, and always a call to action. You've got to ask for the sale. If people don't know what it is you're offering, and people are so afraid to do that. But if people have got thousands of people on their social media, they don't know who you are or what you do. So you just got to keep doing it and just make a commitment to completion. 99% of it is just making a commitment to show up consistently. Podcasters are the most trusted content creators out there. Why? Because you turn up every single week without fail. And that goes a long, long way. So just do not give up. Stop worrying about the stats. It's all about creating the right content that you're getting to show up and serve your ideal client. Show up as yourself. I can be a bit all over the place. I get excited and I'm passionate. That's me. I'm not going to tone it down to fit somebody's, what their idea of, how I should act. And you attract your tribe.
I got that. You attract your tribe. Amazing. Okay, we're about to bring it to an end now, Karin. What would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those ones who would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you do, be your podcast, or maybe you said some things that resonated well with them and they'd like to learn more, how can that be possible?
Well, I suppose my final thought is, you know what? You've got a story. Every story is valid, but it needs to be told. So you've got to find a way to get over the fear of being judged, because you're not being judged, right? Show up, put yourself out there and go for it. And if you'd like to know more, I do have a free, it's a video that will take you through what our process is. So whether you might not want to have your own podcast, but you might want to guest on other podcasts, and you can get that at podcastprofitsunleashed.com/free. It's easy.
Easy peasy. Okay, so that's gonna be the end of the show, Karin. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing this amazing stuff with us. Oh man, it means a whole lot. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.